Joining me today is a very special guest. He's the man behind 360 Promotions. He also is one of the newest inductees to the National Boxing Hall of Fame, Tom Loeffler. Tom, appreciate you taking time to come on today.
Thank you, Zach. Good to see you.
Absolutely. Well, Tom, one of the cool things is that you just recently were inducted into the National Boxing Hall of Fame. That has to be a massive milestone, a massive accomplishment for yourself. Just what's your overall thoughts on being a part of that now?
It's a big honor. You looked at some of the inductees of that class: Bob Arum, 93 years old; Robert Garcia, Fernando Vargas. I mean, I was in great company with that class. Great honor to be inducted in the National Boxing Hall of Fame, and after 33 years and a lot of world championship promotions, I was happy to be recognized for that, for sure.
As I was going through different articles that were talking about you being inducted and going through the comment section as well, one thing that I saw so many people talk about was how Tom hasn't changed over since you've really got into the boxing industry, since all the way back in the 20, 30 years ago now. You're
Yeah.
still the same person in a good way, the sense that you're still a humble person, you're still down to earth. It's not a common trait. That's not what a lot of people do in this industry, or a lot of industries in the world, to be honest. What about you has kept you so balanced and saying, you know what, I want to remain the same Tom Loeffler?
I think it's important to stay grounded. I started out, not really knowing much about the boxing business, kind of being thrown into it. We were working with Muhammad Ali and a lot of very high profile retired athletes. Uh, we signed Kevin Kelly as the first fighter that we worked with, and I pretty much learned trial by fire. We got him in a position to fight for the WBC featherweight championship of the world.
Mm-hmm.
Starting from there, just appreciating uh, the fighters putting their careers and their trust in my hands, and then just being able to see the success, from what Kevin accomplished to getting Shane Mosley a world title fight, and the list kind of goes on and on. It was great working with Triple G, and taking someone that was pretty much unknown here in the U.S. and making him into a global superstar. That was a great accomplishment, and also all the Klitschko fights. So I just appreciate still working with fighters, working with young fighters, developing like King Callum Walsh, who's fighting coming up June 21, and Sergey Bolachuk fighting May 17th. Some of these young fighters, opening the doors for them to become future champions, and it just seems like creating opportunities for fighters. That's really what keeps me passionate about the sport of boxing.
When we go all the way back, you said that boxing wasn't something you were very familiar with. It wasn't an industry that you were knowledgeable at the very beginning of this. So why did you choose boxing? What about boxing drew you into it and saying, you know what, I want to go pursue the sport?
There's no university course or anything you can study to become a boxing promoter. My background was in finance and real estate, and I became a partner in the sports placement service company that, like I said, retired. We represented a lot of retired athletes: Muhammad Ali, Sandy Koufax, Joe Namath, and through Ali, fighters wanted to sign with us, because they were their idol. That's in fact that's how I started working with the Klitschko brothers. I set up a meeting after Vitaly Klitschko beat Ed Mahone. I set up a meeting with Muhammad and Vitaly over here in Los Angeles in our offices, and you meet your idol like that, and Muhammad gives us the green light or the thumbs up and said, "Yeah, these guys are trustworthy and honest," which is also kind of rare, a rare trait in the boxing business I've learned over the years. It just it opened a lot of doors for us, and learning on the job, going through back then all the old fight facts books, looking up records and different things of that nature, making contacts. Kevin Kelly fighting. A lot of people, Zach, thought I was based on the East Coast, because a lot of the fighters that we started working with early on, Kevin Kelly from New York, Obakar from Detroit, Kevin fighting at Madison Square Garden a number of times. So we were really involved with shows there, or fights out on the East Coast more so than on the West Coast. So it was a big learning experience, meeting the people from all the sanctioning bodies, all the commissions, dealing with Madison Square Garden, dealing with HBO. A big Rolodex, and after 33 years, I'd like to say I know pretty much everyone in the boxing business.
Absolutely. Well, here, one sec, Tom. For some reason, the last thing you were saying, someone started cutting out a little bit. I'm trying to see. I'm not sure if it has like a little bit of an echo behind it.
Oh, okay.
Let me see. I'll go to quick commercial break. See if we can figure that fixed real quick.
Okay.
Well, as you just said, Tom, obviously you've now taken this point where you now know just about everybody in the industry. And that's why I want to get into this because you having the career that you had, National Boxing Hall of Fame inductee. I want people to get to know your journey a little bit. And you kind of just briefly brushed over some of these great points, but obviously it's a lot of big accomplishments you brushed over there. So I want to go a little bit deeper into some of those things. And so we started off, you decided to be a manager out the gate. Kevin
Yeah.
Kelly, someone you talked about, Shane Mosley. And so that's the industry you first want to get into. Why was managing the portion that you really wanted to be invested in?
Just guiding their careers. They put their faith in us. Kevin Kelly was rated number one,
Mhm.
but and we got a world title fight. We got a shot on HBO. Lou DiBella was back at HBO. Back then, actually, Kevin Kelly was a great self promoter. He actually talked his way on HBO, but with our contacts, on the sponsors side and the marketing and everything like that, really, tried to take him to the next level. And yeah, Kevin had a lot of tremendous fights.
As you then progress, you decide to go into the promotion aspect, 2004, and that's when you start getting to know the Klitschko brothers. Walk us through that decision. Why did you decide to go from that into the promotion business then?
I thought that on the promotion side, you had control over the events, over the fighters' careers, because as a manager, I was always at the mercy of the promoters, whether
Mm,
it was with Top Rank or back then Cedric Kushner. You're always asking for dates. So it's like one step removed from the television company. So as a promoter with the Klitschko's, after I developed a personal relationship with them, I told them, they were unhappy with their promoter over in Germany at the time, and I told them, I said, look, I told Vitaly, I said, look, when your contract expires or when you get out of your contract, you don't need to have a promoter because you're already at a level where the TV companies want to deal with them directly, the arenas wanted to deal with them directly. I said, let's start our own promotional company, K2 Promotions, and then
mm,
we kept everything in house so that he felt comfortable knowing, everything was transparent. He knew what all the numbers were. He knew what all the ticket sales were. He knew what the licensing fees for from HBO were. He knew what the pay per view numbers were, and that gave him a lot more control and confidence in his career instead of relying on, okay, here's what you're going to pay, and him not knowing really exactly what he was generating
sure.
on his side.
When you talk about the two different components now, obviously promotions where you settled down, you made obviously a great run now between them. The people obviously will go talk to a couple other avenues you've gone down as well. But what do you think is like the best route? Like if you could go back, would you want to start in the promotion industry? Do you like the way you started off and you think it was just kind of part of your story? Or how would you have gone if you could go back and redo it?
I would actually like the route that I took because through managing and creating opportunities on the management side, I knew a lot of the players in boxing, a lot
Mm,
of the HBO people, a lot of the HBO production people. So when we did our very first promotion, a lot of people don't realize that when I say the very first promotion that I ever did was Vitaly Klitschko at Staples Center for the WBC Heavyweight Championship of the World on HBO and worldwide TV. They had a big deal with RTL television as well in Germany, and it was really trial by fire. I made a
mm,
commitment to Vitaly. I said, let's put the fight at Staples Center. That's where your fight belongs because he had that tremendous fight against Lennox Lewis the year before in 2003. And
mhm.
I know Top Rank, Bob was trying to get that fight up in Las Vegas. And I was nothing against Las Vegas, but I just said it's more organic here in Los Angeles because you fought against Lennox Lewis here. You live here in Los Angeles. Your his son was born in Los Angeles, so he had a lot of ties here. And I said it'd be great to build your career here at Staples Center. I think it was the right move. We had a full house for the very first promotion. Everyone was happy. HBO was happy. The California Commission was happy. WC was happy. So it really and then from gaining his trust on that first fight, that first promotion, then I wound up promoting every other fight after that for both Vladimir and Vitaly. And right now K2 and myself hold the record for the most promotions, heavyweight promotions of this century. Usyk
Mm.
is with K2 Ukraine with Alexander Krasyuk, and he's doing a great job continuing that legacy or building on that legacy
Sure, yeah.
um, with our sister company with K2 Ukraine.
You brought up something interesting that I think a lot of fans don't necessarily understand the promotion aspect, and that's in regards to picking the location to make home for fighters, and that can obviously be a difficult thing. But I want you to elaborate on that because that is kind of a foreign concept for so many people. And you said Vegas is the fight capital of the world. Obviously, that's the easy go to for a lot of people. But you identified Staples Center in LA and said, you know what, I feel like this is the best market for you. How do you do that? What was it about that?
It was organic because he just had that tremendous fight with Lennox Lewis. That was one of those things, Zach, where out of all the years I've been involved in boxing, it's been very rare where I've seen a fighter walk in the ring. I would say 80% of the fans for that show were Lennox. I mean, that's a whole nother story. We can spend a whole segment on how that fight came about with Vitaly and Lennox Lewis, because they were originally scheduled to fight two separate people on that show. Vitaly was the co-feature, Lennox was the main event, and in fact, going a step before that, it was supposed to be Lennox as the champion in the main event, and Mike Tyson as the co-feature, and then Mike
Mm.
Tyson pulled out of the fight, and I was bringing actually Vitaly was the mandatory challenger, so I said to Vitaly, "Let's go to Lennox's press conference." And that's when I found out. Steve Kim came out in the parking lot, saw us pulling in, said, "Mike Tyson's off the show. You should get Steve. You should get Vitaly Klitschko on the show." It was a natural progression as the mandatory challenger. So sure enough, we went in, did some interviews at the press conference. Gary Shaw was the lead promoter at the time for Lennox Lewis, and he did not want Vitaly on the show because he wasn't involved with Vitaly. But we knew the CEO of Staples Center of AEG, who runs Staples Center back then, and they liked the idea of having a Ukrainian heavyweight because there's a big Ukrainian population over here in Los Angeles, and that's how we got him on that show. And then when I think it was Kirk Johnson was supposed to fight Lewis, and when he got injured, then we were able to make the fight. HBO said, "Look, in order to salvage the show, Lennox, you got to fight Vitaly because we can't put in a last minute replacement that's not marketable." And that's how Vitaly got to fight. And what I'm saying is, I've never seen someone come in where everyone was cheering. I'd say 80% of the people were cheering for Lennox Lewis as a champion, as a known champion, long reigning champion. And Vitaly wasn't at that time that well known over here in the United States. And he walked in, and most of the people were for him. But then, as he was winning the fight, he was winning 4 out of the 6 rounds. The judges scored it for him, but he had the big gash that opened up on his eye, and the crowd was cheering for him. And when the doctor stopped it, I thought it should have gone on at least another round, or the cut man had control. It was a terrible cut, but or was bleeding. I should say it was bleeding a lot, but the cut man had it under control. And
Mhm.
uh, when Vitaly jumped on the ropes, blood streaming down his face, the crowd just totally changed and was like 80% for Vitaly, cheering him on. So it was
Mhm.
kind of a natural fan base based on that performance to come back and build on that performance a year later after Lennox Lewis vacated the title. Vitaly fought for the vacant title against Corey Sanders, and it was a tremendous promotion.
So then we head over to 2012, and at that point, decided to make another promotion, Triple G Promotions, obviously Triple G there. What led to that whole endeavor?
Well, I had a mutual friend in Germany who saw the success that we had with the Klitschko brothers,
Mhm.
and he knew Gennady, and he said, "Look, Gennady's not happy with his promoter. It was coincidentally the same promoter in Germany that the Klitschko brothers had." So Gennady was able to get out of that contract, and I took him around. Like I said, a lot of people didn't know him. A lot of the meetings that we had, people didn't even know where Kazakhstan was at the time. 2011, he fought. That's an interesting story, Zach. And I can digress a little bit on this. He was supposed to be the co-feature of Vladimir Klitschko fighting in a 50,000 seat soccer stadium in Dusseldorf. The Klitschkos, they were so popular in Germany, really all throughout Europe, but they would sell out consistently every time they fought big soccer stadiums over there. And Vladimir was supposed to fight as naturally the main event. And now was going to be the co-feature. It was going to be a huge kind of like breakout publicity for Triple G. And Vladimir canceled his fight the Monday of fight week. He had a kidney stone that needed to be removed, and so
Mhm.
he couldn't fight. And so Gennady went from fighting inside of a 50,000 seat arena to a 500 seat ballroom in our host hotel there in Dusseldorf, because we already had Dusseldorf. We had the opponent there already for Gennady, Luan Simon, who had never been stopped before in his career. He fought some great names over the course of his career, Luan Simon from Philadelphia.
Mm-hmm.
And so sure enough, we went from a 50,000 seat soccer stadium to promoting Triple G in a 500 seat ballroom, literally a ballroom at the Intercontinental Hotel there in Dusseldorf. And that was the first time we worked with them. That was 2011. So
Okay.
that was an interesting story. Then in January 2012, I had meetings with HBO, with Showtime, with Epix at that time. Epix was they were televising boxing, and I had a very simple pitch. It's like, he's a WBA champion of the world. He doesn't care who he fights. And he just wants to get on the American television. We
Mm-hmm.
weren't requiring any break the bank type of numbers. He just wanted the opportunity to be on TV. Sure enough, when we got that opportunity in I believe it was September of that year, it took 9 months to get him on HBO, and he was going to fight the fight from Pirog from Russia, WBO champion, big right-handed puncher, knocked out Jake in 2 rounds. Dmitry Pirog, I believe his name was, and that was going to be the fight. It was going to be a unification fight between Triple G, WBA champion, and Pirog as WBO champion. Pirog gets injured, and luckily, to Peter Nelson's credit, he said, "No, we made the commitment to Triple G. Let's keep him on. We'll find a different opponent." Artie Blue was the lead promoter on that show, and he got a completely different style. Southpaw European champion from Poland, Proxa, and, uh, and Triple G had a tremendous performance. Stopped him in 5 rounds. HBO said they got a great reaction off of the Triple G fight, and the fans, the HBO subscribers, wanted to know, when are you going to put Triple G back on. So, that was the start of the Triple G era. He was the most active champion at the time. We built a tremendous fan base for him. He fought Gabe Rosado
Mm-hmm.
at the Garden. That was one of those things where I really felt, because of the relationship of MSG, and we put in for Klitschko fights there. I saw the media reaction in New York City to the Klitschko. And I said, look, if we're going to build Triple G, HBO based in New York City, there's a lot of Russian speaking people there in New York City. Let's build them at Madison Square Garden. They were very happy to to uh, to host the Triple G fights there, and that's how we built him. And he was just knocking people out. I mean, he stopped Gabe Rosado. That was a tremendous fight, tremendous performance by Triple G. Then we took him to Monaco. He knocked out one of the opponents over there. I think the Japanese fighter he knocked out there. Then he came back and fought Curtis Stevens. Every time we put Triple G on, especially the East Coast, there's a lot of doubters on the East Coast, because a lot of people on the West Coast, they knew because of Abel and everything, training Big Bear, they knew how good Triple G was. But I remember a lot of media were picking Curtis Stevens to expose Triple G and say, okay, Curtis can punch. He's going to really show American style boxing. And Triple G just took him apart. And then at that point, there were a lot of doubters that it started becoming believers. That with the way he stopped Daniel Deal with one shot, or that body shot uh, uh, against Matthew Macklin. There were some tremendous performances. And when he was knocking guys out in the ring, I just told Gennady, I said, look, you keep doing, for putting on tremendous fights in the ring, exciting fights, knockout performances, and we'll do everything outside the ring. And sure enough, we turned him into. I've never seen a Kazakh fighter become so popular with Mexican fans. They just appreciated him as a humble person, a humble champion.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't see him going out and buying watches or Rolls Royces or things like that. He
True.
just wanted to fight. He wanted to show that he was the best in the world, and that's what he did. He had 23 knockouts in a row, and every time we took him down to Mexico City, did publicity down there with the WBC. We took him to Children's Cancer Ward at the mayor of Mexico City uh, a number of times. We took him down there, and it was great. Wherever we took him, whether it was in the UK, the the U.S., West Coast, East Coast. He became a fan favorite for a lot of boxing fans.
You just talked about another interesting component when it comes to the promotion aspect, and that is getting a fighter identified with another country and become a big fan there. I think we just saw this past weekend. Ramon Cardenas now is embraced by Japanese fans, and I know he's going to take a trip to Japan. And it's like you have these situations where all of a sudden a country that you have no affiliation to becomes someone that's a massive fan base for you moving forward, win or lose or whatever it was. And I think like you just said, it's very, very similar to what Triple G was in Mexico. When you identify that as a promoter, obviously then you want to start marketing it more towards now after match because you see the market available there. How did you kind of see that? And then when something like that does occur, how do you move forward and progress with that, saying, okay, we now have a massive fan base? Probably wasn't maybe expected at first, but we now have a massive fan base in a place like Mexico.
It was very organic, very
Mhm.
like kind of grassroots promoting what I
Okay.
did. In fact, a lot of people, it's funny in boxing, I don't know why there's so many disbelievers, but we sold out StubHub back then. Was the name of StubHub. That's really known as the war grounds here on the West Coast. It just seems
Hmm.
like whenever there's a fight there, it's a very competitive and exciting fight. And the very first fight, I'm from LA, born and raised out here. Abel Sanchez trained Triple G up there in Big Bear. He really was a West Coast fighter, but he had fought either internationally or there at Madison Square Garden. So the very first time we brought him here was after he did an interview with Max Kellerman. I remember on HBO after the fight, when I think it was the Curtis Stevens fight, one of those fights. And
Okay.
Curtis said, well, what's the secret to your success? Why are you so excited? And he's like, well, I fight Mexican style. Just because Abel is Mexican and uh, and that's the style that he taught. Very aggressive, very exciting, fan-friendly style. That's what the Mexican fans love. They want to see exciting fights. They don't want to see someone dancing around the ring for 12 rounds, whatever it is, to win a point decision. They want to see a fight. If you're going to pay money to go buy a ticket, if you're going to buy a pay-per-view, if you're going to buy a subscription to HBO, whatever it was, at the time they wanted to see an exciting fight. And Triple G brought pure excitement, and we had 2,000 seats in a 7,000 seat arena. We had 2,000 bleacher seats, so we had a 9,000 capacity in a 2,000 seat arena, 7,000 seat arena.
Wow.
And people were saying, "I bought all the tickets," and I'm like, "Why would I? Why would I buy the ticket? That doesn't make any sense." There were ticket scalpers that knew exactly what it was as soon as we released more, because we had some tickets on hold. As soon as we released more tickets, like within a day or 2 days, they were all completely sold. The box office had never seen anything like that. And
Mm.
it was a lot of the Mexican fans who wanted to come and see Triple G. Naturally, like I said, with Abel as a trainer, doing a lot of interviews in Spanish. Triple G was throwing out the baseball at Dodger Stadium a number of times. He went to the Laker games. He really was a promoter's dream at that time, being very exciting in the ring and also understanding the concept of promoting the fight. A lot of fighters say, no, I can't do the interviews because I'm training or resting or I'm focused on the fight. And Triple G, in those early years, he was a uh, tremendous to work with because he was very receptive to all the ideas that I come up with on the marketing side, and it
Mm.
worked out well. Both from the promotion side and him on the boxing side. I was able to translate that into a Jordan sponsorship deal. They've only sponsored three boxers in the history of the
Mm.
Jordan brand. Uh, it was Roy Jones, Andre Ward, and Triple G. So that's one of my best accomplishments, I think, is getting Triple G, a kid from Kazakhstan, Jordan sponsorship. That's almost
That's
means to me
crazy.
as much as getting him, unified champion, because those are so hard to get. But it was tremendous support. All the other sponsorships that we got for him from Hublot, and kind of, it was good being able to secure financial success for Triple G, not only in the ring but also on the sponsorship side. And yeah, I was really proud of all those accomplishments.
Another cool thing about you is that then in 2017, you head over and you start doing the Superfly series. And there's
Mhm.
a unique portion about that. And it's something that just fought this past weekend, Noah Inoue, who is one, if not the number one fighter in the world right now. And you were the very first promoter to bring him to the United States, a part of that series. It's got to be a huge accomplishment there as well. The 10 to 7,000 fans at the StubHub Center, you've mentioned a few different times now. I have to ask you about that then, because obviously you're talking about this is way before he becomes the guy he is today. Did you expect him to become that type of fighter back when you first started promoting him and wanting to bring him over?
With Inoue, you could tell Inoue was a special fighter at the time. I've got to give Peter Nelson credit again because we had coupled Triple G as the main event and Chocolatito as the co-feature. I think for 4 fights. There were fights
Mhm.
there at Madison Square Garden, 2 times at Madison Square Garden, 1 time here, or maybe 2 times before. So in Los Angeles, and Chocolatito had always been a great fighter, but he never got exposure on American TV. Similar to Triple G, very similar story, just from Nicaragua and a different weight division. But as soon as he was exposed or promoted to the fans on HBO, he became a fan favorite. Triple G, Chocolatito was such a likable guy. They both tremendously likable guys, and we had literally, I don't think this has ever happened in boxing, Zach. I don't know if it's ever going to happen again. We had the #1 pound for pound fighter and the #2 pound for pound fighter on the same show. And some people were saying, well, Chocolatito was #1 or Triple G was #1, but either way, they were universally at that time considered the top 2 fighters, and that's what the fans appreciated. They know when they were coming to one of those shows, they were going to get exciting fights. It was like a soccer stadium in there where you had Cossack flags, you had Nicaraguan flags, you had Mexican flags. It was a great energy there, and because of the success and the response that Chocolatito got as the co-feature on these big shows that we were doing with Triple G, Peter said, "Look, let's just give Chocolatito his own main event." And there were so many good fighters in that flyweight, super flyweight division that we had all 3 fights in the super flyweight division, and they just called it Superfly. And
Okay.
and we spun off a series. We did 3 Superfly shows
Hmm.
um, while HBO was still doing boxing, and tremendous success. And all those guys were just appreciative of getting in the spotlight, getting on the platform of HBO, which before they were kind of locked out of because HBO never, uh, or I should say not just only HBO, but American television never really focused on the lighter weight division. I always thought they were exciting fights, and but you would
Okay.
always see them in Mexico or Japan, but never much here featured in the U.S. And that was great. Chocolatito was tremendous in a way. Like I said, he put on a great fight. It was hard fighting opponents for in a way, but he put on a great show, and you could see the pedigree that he was going to become a tremendous champion. And I was happy to see uh, the exposure and success that in a way has gotten over the years.
I want to just touch up on the Inoue component now that you obviously know the promotion game. There's been a lot of debate. People say, okay, well, obviously it was a success from coming out to Las Vegas. He earned a lot of fans out here. At the same time, we know the industry is built there in Japan where he can sell the Tokyo Dome whenever he wants. He obviously can get easy things. And as people have say, well, hey, financially, obviously he's set if he just stays in Japan the rest of his career. But you have the promotional mindset. So if you were to be his main promoter and you were to do all these different things for him right now, do you think it would make sense for him to continue to fight in places like here? I know there's been rumors of him fighting potentially in Wembley down the road against a guy like Nick Ball? Or do you think, find that location, whether that probably be Japan, is that the best fit, kind of the best fit for a fighter then?
When you have a generational fighter like a Triple G, like Inoue, uh, uh, hopefully like Kellen Walsh, he's on
Hmm.
that same path. Uh, my philosophy with Triple G, because he was beating everyone. He didn't care who he fought. He didn't care where he fought. Uh, I really liked taking him to the biggest venues that we could. Going to the O2 Arena. Triple G sold out the O2 Arena against Kell Brook. Originally, he
Hmm.
was supposed to fight a unification fight with Billy Joe Saunders. That didn't work out. Then he was going to fight Chris Eubank Jr., who just had a tremendous fight against Conor Ben. That didn't work out. So then Kell Brook stepped up and said, "I'll fight Triple G." He was the #1 welterweight at the time, and he moved up 2 divisions to fight Triple G. That's what we saw. We've seen that now a few times,
Yeah.
and that was an exciting fight. Sold out O2 Arena, or taking Monte Carlo, having Prince Albert sitting in the front row with Princess Charlene. That was like surreal experience fighting in Monaco, or when Triple G fought Murata in the Saitama Arena, selling
Hmm.
that over in Japan. I really thought, you know, to me, the definition of a world champion is you shouldn't only fight in one arena or one state or one country.
Agree.
But it takes a special fighter to do that, because there's a lot of American fighters that never wanted to go fight over in Europe, They thought
Hmm.
somehow they'd get robbed over there or wouldn't be treated the right way. And when you have a confident fighter that knows that he can beat pretty much anyone in his division, like Triple G, like in a way is very confident, very successful. I believe I like the idea of him coming over here maybe once a year or once every 2 years, and
Yeah.
just keeping the fan base over here in the United States. That's one thing. Like with the Klitschko's, they went back and forth. They would fight over here, then they'd fight in Europe, and
Hmm.
at one point, the kind of German management side wanted to keep him over there, over in Europe, and I thought it was kind of a mistake not having him fight over here in the United States more, because it would have given them a bigger legacy over here. As successful as they were, Vladimir having set the record for the longest reigning heavyweight champion, I still think their legacy would have been bigger in fighting over here a couple more times. But that's just my personal philosophy. I know a lot of fighters are comfortable. Like Floyd got very comfortable up there fighting in Las Vegas. He was familiar with
Yeah.
the commission, familiar with the testing, familiar with the judges, the officials, that type of thing. And a lot of fighters don't believe that. But like I said, with Triple G, I really thought it was important. I kind of, through my experience with Ali and just knowing his history everywhere he fought, from Zaire to Manila to Tokyo, where he fought in the Tokyo Dome, to all over the world, in Europe a number of times, and naturally over here in the U.S. Madison Square Garden. Uh, I wanted to base the Triple G uh, career and rise based on what Muhammad accomplished, and he did do very well internationally, for sure.
All right, so then you decide to take your next journey as starting up 360 Promotions, and that's obviously been a great success for yourself. That's what you've been invested in heavily now, and you got to walk us through this decision, because then you obviously go and you create this entirely new promotion group.
Yeah,
What was about that? What inspired you? Why did you want to go down this route?
because first I was running K2 promotions for the Klitschko's,
Hmm.
their promotional company. Then I was running Triple G promotions for Triple G. It's his promotional company. Uh, I was organizing everything, but then I really wanted to have my own promotional company where I could sign new fighters, take
Hmm.
all the financial risk, because it was unfair to Triple G to say, look, let's sign this guy here, take the risk here, invest in this career, when
Makes
he
sense.
might not have been interested in that. So I started that out on a smaller level, just to sign some local fighters with a lot of potential that were popular here, but given an opportunity, and it's worked out really well. HBO unfortunately got out of the boxing business. I really thought that they were the best platform to develop champions and superstar careers. I had tremendous success with them. Over the years, between Kevin Kelly and Shane Mosley, even James Toney, fought on HBO, and very supportive. They were supportive of the Klitschko fights, the Triple G fights. So when uh, HBO got out of the business, I didn't have a TV partner, so a lot of the shows, we were just doing our own stream, and getting the exposure for the fighters. And then when we signed Callum Walsh, I met with Dana White. And I said, Dana, I got uh, I got a guy from Ireland that I knew Dana loved the Irish, uh, based on what the success he had with Conor McGregor.
Yeah.
And Dana was, there was one time Dana said the only reason he watches boxing is to watch Triple G, because he was the most exciting boxer. So I met with Dana and brought Callum up there, and got a deal with UFC Fight Pass,
Hmm.
which is a streaming service, a worldwide streaming service, the largest combat sports platform in the world. They do over like 220 combat sports events a year,
Yeah.
and they never really had a strong boxing presence. They had some boxing shows, but it wasn't really promoted to the level that it could be. And Callum Walsh, Dana gave us the green light. Uh, First year, four shows. We In those four shows, we had the highest ratings that we've gotten for boxing, and then it just grew from there. This year, we're doing a monthly series, 12 shows a year. Calvin's been one of the most active fighters, as a rising star. He fought in Madison Square Garden 3 times in the theater there. He fought in Dublin at the Three Arena, where Katie Taylor uh, has fought. Fought. Uh, he had 5,000 people go there. Sergey Boychuk was developed on the 360 series.
Hmm.
Sergey, one of the top fighters in the world. Omar Trinidad rated number 2 in the IBF, and rated in the top 10 of the WBC. Omar's a tremendous story from Boyle Heights, and this show we have coming up. Exactly, we're alluding to some of the shows we have coming up. This show, May 17th, you're headlined by Sergey Bochuk, then Omar Trinidad is the co-feature, and then we signed a, a world champion, a female world champion, WBO champion, Mizuki Haruta from Japan. You know, we were talking about Inoue. You know, I also worked with Kazuto Ioka. We had him on the Superfly show. I have a lot of excitement for Mizuki. She looks like an anime character. She's got pink hair. She walks out with tremendous outfits into the ring, and she's really exciting. So we have that May 17th at Commerce Casino, and then Callum Walsh is fighting June 21 up at Chumash Casino. Chumash is beautiful up there in Santinez Valley by Santa Barbara. You know, so this platform, the 360 promotions, Hollywood Fight Nights on UFC Fight Pass, really gives a lot of opportunities to these younger up and coming fighters. And you know, Omar Trinidad, like I said, from Boyle Heights, from very humble beginnings, didn't have a outstanding amateur career, but you know, as a professional, every time we put him in a tougher fight he was knocking everyone out. We need to sign more, so we signed him to a promotional contract. Yeah, he's one of my favorite fighters to watch for sure.
All right, so you look at the stable you have built so far. A lot of guys you just listed here. I know some other guys. Kane Sandoval's obviously a guy that I'm really high on. I like him a lot. But when you talk about, you know, let's say who you're going to possibly build this around the next 4 or 5 years, is there one guy that you say, you know what, this is the guy I believe will become world champion, maybe a unified, maybe whatever. Like you see him being the guy or her being the person that becomes your biggest star in the next 4 or 5 years?
It's hard to predict that because you can only tell when you put someone in at the highest level.
Sure.
I think Sergey Bochuk is the best 154-pound fighter out there. You know, if you knock down Virgil Ortiz twice, but somehow lose a decision in Las Vegas, you know, I thought he won that fight. So, you know, I don't count that as a loss against his career. I think Sergey will definitely be a world champion. Callum has all the makings of becoming a world champion. It's hard to pick one guy because even though Callum looks so impressive right now, where he's at, 13-0 with 11 knockouts, you know, until he really fights, you know, a number one, number two, number three, or top five guy, it's going to be hard to say where he is. You know, the you know, I keep telling people there was only one Triple G, but you know, the young generation of fighters. One advantage that Callum has, being from Ireland, having a built-in fan base, very fan-friendly style, a lot of knockouts, very marketable, very charismatic. A lot of Irish fans coming to his fights. I really like when Callum gets in the ring. You mentioned Kane Sandoval, tremendous fighter, also undefeated. It's just hard to really predict who's going to become a champion until they actually have that test. And Bochuk had that test, you know, against Virgil Ortiz. You saw Brian Mendoza, world class fighter, and then stopped Ishmael Davis over there in Saudi. You know, he has all the makings of what I would say is a tremendously hard-working, hard-punching a world champion.
Going a little bit more to Callum Smith, he's someone I am really high on. As you said, obviously, it's still time to determine what's going to happen when he fights those top contenders. But when you talk about just how bright his future is, how high are your hopes? Obviously, you said you don't know exactly yet because of all those things, but just you see what you do know so far, the data's on the paper, what you do know. How special do you think he can become?
Well, Callum could be very special. Callum Walsh, he trained by Freddie Roach, Hall of Fame trainer Freddie Roach. You know, the thing with Triple G, if I keep going back to him, Abel said, you know, when I talked to him about him, because I didn't know much about, I knew he had a great amateur career, but he kind of, you know, didn't really hear much about his fights over there in Germany. He didn't really get the publicity and promotion over there. And he started training with Abel. A lot of people don't realize he was training with Abel Sanchez before I started working with him. And I knew Abel going all the way back. In fact, he was the one that introduced me to the Hall of Fame induction ceremony. I knew him all the way back to like 1992 when he was helping with Oba Carter. When Abel was training Terry Norris, and we had Oba down there in San Diego with him. I asked Abel, like, what do you think? And he's like, Tom, I never felt someone hit that hard, especially as a middleweight. He's like, I've never had a fighter hit that hard. And so, you know, that's all I needed to hear from Abel. And Freddie Roach said something very similar. He's like, I've never, you know, between his punching power and his talent in the ring, and, you know, Freddie was very, very high on Callum before he turned pro. Callum had an interesting story. He came over. here to California and didn't even have any intention of turning pro. He was a European gold medalist. He was going to go back to Ireland. He was going to come here for like 2 weeks. It was during the pandemic. Everything was shut down in Ireland. His dad was living here in Long Beach, so he came over to visit his dad. Had a little bit of a challenge getting into the country, but he finally managed to get in, and went to Wildcard to go see Freddie and asked if he could train at Wildcard Gym, and Freddie said, you can train here, but today's sparring day, so if you want to train, you have to spar. So here's Callum, amateur fighter, fighting 3 rounds, and Freddie put him in, and he was sparring professionals for 6 rounds, and Freddie's like, okay, you did good, kid. You can come back tomorrow. Ever since then, Freddie's been working with them. Callum decided to stay here. He turned professional that year. Like I said, after his pro debut, we met with Dana White. He gave him green light, gave him a ton of support, both on UFC Fight Pass and all the backing. It's a huge machine. What UFC is able to do on their social media and all the fan base that they've built up. Callum's kind of known as that boxing fella. When we take him to the UFC fights, all the UFC fans say, "Oh, there's that boxing fella." They know him because Dana supported him so much, and I think the sky's the limit with Callum. Like I said, he's got that built-in Irish charisma, the swagger, the knockout power, southpaw, big, tall for 154 pounder. I really kind of very similar to a Manny Pacquiao style, where just very aggressive, and with Freddie Roach, training a southpaw puncher like that, I think he fits right. He had a tremendous amateur career, but he's really taken to the professional style really well. Similar to Triple G. Triple G was an Olympic silver medalist, and a lot of the successful amateurs don't always make a great professional career.
Yeah.
And both Triple G, Callum Walsh, Vladimir Klitschko was a gold medalist in the Olympics. They all made that successful transition, but it's not a guarantee. Just because you're an Olympic champion doesn't mean you're going to be a world champion in professional boxing.
Absolutely. Well, I got a couple questions before I let you go, Tom. And one of those is that I guess I have to ask you this component. We know that just got announced that Dana White's doing his very first TKO event is going to be the Bud Crawford Canelo one. I know you obviously have ties you've alluded to a few times during this interview. Is that something that we could see you getting involved with the TKO? Obviously, we don't know exactly what it's all going to look like to this point, but is that something we could see you getting intertwined with and working alongside Dana with at all?
I think Dana making the commitment. He made that announcement at our Dublin show that he's all into boxing. So I think Dana getting into boxing is going to bring a tremendous amount of energy into the sport of boxing. Whether it's a TV deal, whether it's developing new champions. I mean, what he's accomplished with the UFC. When I went to their fights, and I've been to a number of their fights, both here and internationally. I mean, the way it just runs like clockwork. All their events, the promotion, the publicity, the fan base that they've built up. And so if he could do anything similar to that in boxing, I think it's going to be tremendous for the sport of boxing. And I'm looking forward to having Dana involved in boxing for sure.
Absolutely. Well, Tom, my final question I like wrapping up every single interview with is talking about your legacy. You've obviously had an incredible run to this point, and however long it is, one day you probably will step away from boxing. When that day does come, what is it that you want everyone to remember Tom Loeffler for?
Just being a good guy, someone that, if I give my word to someone, to a fighter, I always do my best to make sure that comes true. And, I just like long-term relationships. You got to treat people the right way, when you're on the way up and when you're on the way down, you got to treat people the right way. And, Kevin Kelly, he lives in Las Vegas. I still see him on a regular basis. Still talk to him on a regular basis. The Klitschko's, I just saw Vladimir yesterday. He was here in Los Angeles. I talked to Vitaly a number of times. He's the mayor of Kiev now. Triple G, I'd love to see his success. He's now the head of the National Olympic Committee.
Yep.
And I think he could, I wouldn't say single-handedly, but he could lead the charge of saving boxing for the Olympics. I mean, not having boxing in the Olympics is almost unthinkable to me. And if Triple G can do his part to save it, with his position now on the International Olympic stage, I think that would be a great thing. So that's what I'd like to be remembered for. Yeah, not only giving fighters opportunities, but having good relationships with the fighters. And I've kind of, Zach, I've narrowed it down down to where if I'm going to work really hard for a fighter and invest money in the fighter and a lot of time in a fighter's career, it's got to be someone I want to be around. It's got to be someone that I want to, have lunch with or have a coffee with or whatever it is. And
Sure.
otherwise, I'm just not interested. There's a lot of talented fighters, super talented fighters in the ring, but if it's not someone that I really can appreciate as far as their character or something like that, then I don't. It's not really what I'm looking to do. That's kind of my legacy, is just having good relationships with uh, people that I've met in boxing. Travel boxing has afforded me the opportunity to travel all over the world. All the conventions that I've been to, all the fights that we promoted all over the world, and that's what I really like, is the worldwide friendships that I've gained in the sport of boxing.
Absolutely. Well, Tom, it's been an honor having you on today. I'm excited the guys got in store for you, and I appreciate taking time to come on today once again.
Appreciate that. Make sure to watch those two fights.
Absolutely,
May
everyone. Make sure to tune in. Definitely.
May 17th, Commerce Casino, and June 21, SchuZ Casino, both live on UFC Fight Pass.
Absolutely. Well, Tom, thank you once again for coming on. You're always welcome on. God bless.
Appreciate that. Thanks, Zach.
Yep, no problem. Talk to you later.
Okay.